Hi, Jay Brannan here with another episode of Jay's Walks and Talks. This is episode 5, first one for a while, and today is just basically a sit down where I'm going to talk about a good old friend of mine, Michael Insell. This Sunday will represent 2 years since he sadly took his own life in November 2019, and I just felt like I wanted to kind of pay tribute to him this weekend really and remember him. I mean, he's someone that's been on my mind obviously ever since it happened, ever since I knew him really, to be honest with you. He's always been a man that I've held in high regard, and such a good friend to me. Back in the day at Queen Alexandra College, which is where we met in August 2017. We both started at the same time, along with another one of our mutual friends, Tom Nelson. And he was just someone that I kind of hit it off with pretty quickly really, started going drinking with, and then eventually that sort of drinking became more regular. It happened in the holidays, in the weekends, and by the third term we were pretty much spending every day together really. I remember during the World Cup in 2018, sharing in the great moment when England made the semi-finals. We were going drinking after work, watching the matches quite often. And that really helped me at the time, actually, especially because obviously I was battling to keep my job, which unfortunately I didn't, which was such a gutting moment, of course. And one of the reasons it was so devastating, I think it's one of the reasons why I broke down so heavily at the funeral in December 2019, was the fact that I'd been kind of robbed of that year with Michael, the second year. Yes, we still met up from time to time, but obviously not as regularly because we weren't working together. And I remember just feeling like I'd missed out on more time with Michael because of the fact that I didn't get to stay at QAC beyond my 1 year. But the 1 year I did work with him, and I did actually work directly with him for about a term initially in sport, was just a beautiful time really. He was such a loving and tender guy. One thing I used to love about Michael, and it was very unusual for a male friend, was the fact that he'd come up and give you a good big hug, when you'd met, particularly like if were meeting on a weekend, or and even when you'd finished drinking after work, he'd give Tom a hug, me a hug maybe, or just me if it wasn't the three of us and stuff. And that was highly unusual out of male friends. I had no problem with it though. I really liked that warmth, and I missed that greatly actually. I just love to see him again, just get a big hug off him really. He was also, one of his great qualities for me was how non-judgmental he was. He was someone that was very forgiving. He tried to see the best in people. He really did. And that's not just me trotting out cliches because someone's passed on. Sometimes you don't want to speak ill of the dead. But actually, this is genuine. It really was. He very rarely had much criticism of people, actually. He got on with so many different people. Even if they maybe weren't even that keen on him, he'd still make an effort, with them and stuff. And I thought that was one of his greatest qualities, actually, because I think far too often people can be judgmental. They can hold grudges, and certainly, one or two of the people that were behind me losing my job, certainly those who kind of like to, stick to their dislike for you, even if it was kind of irrational at times, and the grudges were held and stuff like that. And I personally find that quite undesirable in people generally. I like to think I'm someone that doesn't particularly hold a grudge unless it's really, really justified. And I think Michael in particular was even better than me in that regard, in being able to put things to one side and move on, and stuff. He really was. We shared a lot of mutual bands, The Prodigy, Nirvana. I wish I talked more to him about Nirvana, actually. I remember regretting that a little bit, actually, because Nirvana are, one of my all-time favourites and stuff. He liked a lot of heavy rock. He reminded me of Slipknot, actually. That was his favourite band, Slipknot. And because I remember when I was at school getting an album of theirs given to me by a friend when I was about 15, but it got confiscated in a GCSE science lesson by the lab technician, Ivor Gurney. Now, as I say, I don't like to hold grudges, but, at the same time, if he's ever listening to this, wouldn't mind having that back. I don't think I ever got the album back. So Slipknot was kind of like, a kind of nostalgic reminder for me, because it reminded me of those times when I was getting into music at the age of 14, 15, listening to quite a lot of nu metal, as it was termed back in the day. And I've actually kind of listened to Slipknot quite a few times since he passed on, actually, Michael. And I love, one or two of the tracks now. I wish I could tell him, actually, how much I was into songs like Psychosocial. And talking to him about music was always good fun. I remember at lunchtimes at QAC, we'd just have the occasional aside, we both had our student, but we'd just have that little exchange, have you heard this, have you listened to that? Or I might make a joke about one band he liked that I didn't. I wasn't that keen on Guns N' Roses. Equally, he definitely wasn't a fan of the Manic Street Preachers or Oasis, but I liked that banter that you could have with him, really, as well, about music. He followed Manchester United like me. One thing that always stood out for me was his favourite player for United was John O'Shea. Out of all the icons that we've had in the last 30 years, Cristiano Ronaldo, David Beckham, Eric Cantona, you know, Paul Scholes, Ruud van Nistelrooy, yeah, his favourite player was a good player, but not one of our superstars. But I always liked that. He was a bit quirky, and that was Michael to a T, really. A little bit different, not afraid to go against the grain. You know, perhaps a little maverick, which is a word that I used to like to use a lot at QAC, actually. And that was another thing that I used to love about Michael as well. As our friendship developed during the year, you know, I think I appreciate it more and more, really, because my popularity at Queen Alexandra College did deteriorate over time, of course. You know, I mean, like, when you're battling to keep your job, there are reasons for that. When you've got a few people that are kind of, you know, giving feedback negatively about you, which I found, you know, I don't want to go too much into all that, but I just thought that was, you know, distasteful personally. I can't stand that kind of grassing culture. But Michael knew that, you know, in some quarters, particularly with people I used to term as big fish, my popularity had dimmed, but he never in any way questioned the friendship in any sense, or even, you know, even without saying it, he never kind of became less of a friend. In fact, if anything, I think our friendship was at the strongest right at the end of my time at QAC, actually, whereas one or two other friends or people I got on with, you know, seemed to kind of turn against me a little bit, I felt, and kind of weren't that supportive during my time. But Michael stood by me no matter what, despite the fact that I maybe wasn't popular with one or two of the kind of more popular characters at the college, really. And I think that kind of made me appreciate him even more. And when I lost my job, in August 2018 it would have been, I told him the next day, and I said to him, you know, obviously I want to meet up and all that, and the first message he sends back is, we'll be friends forever. And that to me, you know, was just so touching, really, because I was at one of my lowest ever points, quite frankly. I mean, that job meant so much to me, not just because it was a good job, stimulating, challenging, like the students and everything, felt like the area, had them, you know, I was wanting to move to Harborne as well at the time, and also had other good friends at the college as well. I mentioned obviously Tom Nelson earlier, you know, and a few others at the college at the time, and Michael, of course. You know, it cost me, you know, a big social life, and also my plans going forward were, you know, shattered, really, with this loss of the job that, you know, was easily the best job I ever had. But to get that text message from Michael the next morning, you know, said everything you need to know, really, about, you know, his kind of warmth, his kind of consideration, his understanding of people, and it was true as well. I mean, yes, we'll never be able to test it now, but we did meet up a few times anyway after I left QAC. You know, met up with Tom again as well in July 2019, which was great because we started together as a three, and it was just lovely to see him. And like, I remember when I saw him for, you know, my birthday and stuff, you know, just the happiness on his face as well, and that, you know, means a lot, even if it doesn't sound like that big a thing, but it really is. And you know, for him to keep that friendship going after QAC was huge for me as well, because it kind of just kept a link to me to that job, and it just kept me sort of in touch, really, and part of that community a little bit for a time. And I think we'd still be friends now. I'm 100% confident of that. I really do. In fact, I've missed him so much over the last couple of years. I mean, as everyone would that knew him, I think, and I was good friends with him and everything. I'm not saying I'm any different in that respect, but for me, I think, like, I've had some really tough times in the last 18 months. You know, I had a breakdown in autumn 2020 where, you know, I had to have the police come out and, you know, take me to hospital because, you know, I was threatening to jump in a river, basically, and rolling around on the floor in hysterics. And, like, to be honest, I've not said that to many people, one or two, but it's not so much that I'm not afraid to talk about it, because I'm not. You know, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Obviously, it was a very unhappy chapter in my life, and something that, you know, I can't quite believe happened in a way now, a year on. And I'm still not in the best place now, but I'm trying to sort of gradually get back out there again, because I've really struggled adjusting to post-lockdown life. And, like, I feel like I can tell some people that, but with Michael, because he went through his own demons, he would have related more to it, been more empathetic, if you like, perhaps more understanding. You know, I'll get support of other people, but it's different when someone can understand what you've been through yourself. And a lot of our problems were quite shared. It's why I think our friendship became stronger, because of the emotional bonding between the pair of us. And yeah, I've missed him hugely, and, you know, in part because there's things that I feel I can't really say to other friends, or they don't understand quite so well, that I think Michael would have done. And, you know, it really does hurt me to think, sorry, that, you know, he isn't here anymore. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, like I say, I try to remember a lot of the good times as well. Yeah. Sorry. Just keeping it together now. Yeah, I do. I mean, there was a lot of great times, really. I mean, like, you know, nights out with other people sometimes that's been the Flapper and Firkin. Great quiz night. We played some really good pool. In fact, I wish we'd played a lot more pool, actually, because You know, he was a good player and narrowly won that match, but I think we'd have had some good contests actually if we played a bit more. You know, he was, you know, a really funny guy. You know, I mean, a lot of people think our friendship was based a lot on quite serious chats, and like I said, there was a lot of emotional talk and a lot of sort of sharing our problems and stuff like that, no question. But actually, often when we first met in an evening, for the first 2 or 3 hours, there'd be a lot of laughs, there'd be a lot of chats about women. You know, some of the conversations might not have been that woke, but they certainly weren't in any way offensive. You know, equally, you know, we used to talk football, obviously the same music, TV and comedy. Oh, sorry, TV and film, I'd say was a little bit different. You know, I don't think our tastes were quite on the same page, although I do remember one of the last conversations we had, in fact I think it was the last conversation, which was 6 days before he died, was about the Batman film that had come out, as well as the new Slipknot album that I mentioned earlier with Psychosocial on. So I'm glad that we were still having those kind of chats even at the end. The funeral obviously hit me hard. You know, I think I hadn't processed it fully at all before the funeral. I mean, I was just numb when I heard the news from Tom, actually. Tom messaged me to tell me about the news, and you know, I don't think I processed it, maybe because I wasn't at QAC anymore. I don't think I could quite take it in, you know, entirely, because I was not having anyone to chat too much about it. I wasn't around people on a day-to-day basis that were also going through the grief or dealing with Michael's passing. But when I went to the funeral, I saw a few Queen Alexandra people, some, you know, that I hadn't seen for a very, well, since I'd left, basically. Apart from Tom, I don't think I'd seen anyone there since I'd left. It kind of all hit me. Like I say, I was kind of, you know, upset about the fact that it reminded me about what I'd lost at QAC. Not just my own job, I mean, more, you know, the fact I'd missed out on a year with Michael. And also the fact that, you know, this was final, if you know what I mean. Like, you know, even now, obviously, you don't fully comprehend you're never going to see someone again. You know, it's the same with my granddad when he died in 2012. You know, those 2 funerals affected me more than any others I've been to. But, you know, I think you know, with Michael, you know, he had a lot of demons, and that's not, as I say, I'm not going to get into any of that. That's not what this video's about. I wanted just to remember him really as a guy that was, you know, extremely warm, very loving, an entertainer, bit of a maverick, a great music fan. You know, a real lover, very passionate about his bands actually. I mean, he reminded me also of a few noughties indie bands that I'd forgotten, such as Milburn. You know, he didn't like the sort of big hitters, if you like, your Oasis of the 90s, etc. Even the noughties, he wasn't keen on a lot of the bigger bands like Franz Ferdinand, though he did like Kasabian, I remember. And, you know, I also, for me, I think my fondest memories, though, are the World Cup 2018, going to the pub every day after work. It was a glorious summer of weather as well. Every day was hot. It was quite ridiculous for about 3 months in 2018. And although, you know, I was having my own problems with the job, having that time with Michael definitely avoided me cracking up a lot sooner than I did. I did eventually have a meltdown over the job, you know, in the summer holidays, waiting for my appeal, because I appealed my sacking. But Michael was key to keeping me on a bit more of an even keel, you know, having him, because if I'd just gone home after work every night during that period, you know, with the stress of keeping my job, I don't think I could have coped as much. Having Michael to go drinking with for 4 or 5 hours after work was massive. Even if at times you still got down, just having him to talk to, try and take my mind off things, because it wasn't always, you know, we didn't even talk that much about the work situation all the time. I didn't really want to get into it that much because I was still just, you know, battling away. I just wanted to try and, you know, keep it in a little bit, not sort of get too emotionally invested in this battle to keep my job. But having Michael there to watch football, talk about other things, talk about him, talk about his own issues if he wanted to, was, you know, really important. And that to me was good friendship. And like I say, I just really appreciate the support he showed me during that time. And I think, you know, I'd love to go back and revisit that period in some way, spend that, you know, constant time with him. You know, makes such a difference to a life, you know, to your life to have friends like that. And especially in work, you know, it really does. I think, like, you know, overall, I think, like, I think that's where I'll leave it for now. You know, to be honest, I just want to kind of leave on that positive note, really, about sort of the support he showed me, the loyalty. I mean, that was one of the great things I'd say. I mean, if you had to, you know, sum him up in 5 words, you know, loyalty would certainly be one of them. Just by the way, there, that's to show that I was in a cemetery there for a reason, but basically it's the only quiet place I could find where I could do this. I couldn't do it at home with people around, and I couldn't do it in public, you know, because obviously, you know, parks or something like that, because there's too many people, too many dog walkers about. So yes, fortunately I had to choose a cemetery in the end to come into. But hopefully this video, though, you know, did a good job at celebrating his life, and giving you a little taste of what he was about really as a person, and hopefully, you know, an understanding of why he meant so much to me, and maybe why people can understand, you know, why I broke down so much at the funeral, though I think most people from QSC would understand that anyway, knowing how tight we were in the year I spent there and stuff. And yeah, I mean, just rest in peace to Michael, really. You know, I just, you know, he'll always be remembered, you know, even if I don't do a video every year or whatever, you know, it will always be remembered in some way by me. But not just, you know, on the anniversary, of course not. You know, you remember him all the time. I do. I mean, every day you think of something different, really. Whether it be a song, whether it be a TV show, you know, when United play. You know, I'd love to be able to tell him about what I'm thinking about Solskjaer, you know, about Ronaldo coming back. I mean, he'd have loved that, actually, I think, Ronaldo coming back, because he loved that era of the noughties particularly. I think that's when he actually used to go to Old Trafford from time to time to watch Man United play, actually, in that period when we had Cristiano Ronaldo the first time around. And, you know, obviously, you know, I still follow a few people from QSC on Instagram. I'm sure they'll be remembering him as well this weekend, as they always do anyway. And yeah, I just think Michael Insell, you know, he was here for 32 years, but he really left a really important print on the planet, really, in terms of, you know, bringing a lot of joy to people. You know, he's a wonderful, you know, son to his parents. He really was. You know, he was very, very supportive of both of them, his mum and dad, and his family at large. And he was also a great friend to so many people, because, like I say, he saw the best in people, did Michael. But I hope to think that deep down he knew that we saw the best in him as well, because I certainly did. And, you know, I cherish that time I had together with him, just over 2 years, and I wish it had been longer. But quite frankly, even for those 2 years, you know, he left a massive impact on me as a person. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there, because I could just carry on, but I'm also running out of video time actually here. I didn't really notice that. Yeah, so thank you for listening, and yeah, all the best.